Hey everyone, this is Austin Schur here with We Write About Music, and today I am speaking with Jude Adams. She has just released a fantastic new record called Freedom, and I am very excited to talk to her all about it. Jude, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day today. How are you?
I'm good. Well, I've got a little bit of a cold, but just a seasonal thing. Nothing more sinister than that, hopefully.
Hopefully not.
I'm good. I'm good, thank you. I'm actually, I live in the UK, but I'm actually in Spain, southern Spain for a month, which is very nice.
For vacation or?
Yeah, mostly a vacation
Nice.
and health and stuff like that. So
Totally.
really, really, really lovely. And we're in a town called Almeria, which is on the southeastern coast.
Nice.
And
Definitely one of the warmer places in Europe at the moment.
it is
So-
much better than it would be at home. So
oh yeah,
forgive me, everybody I know
that's a
who's suffering
fact.
the rain and everything.
Yes, definitely beats the cold and dreary weather. That is a
Yeah,
fact. Well, you've got this new record out, and I
yeah.
I personally love it. I've taken the
Thank
opportunity to
you.
listen to it a couple times through, and it's always best explained by the person who created it as to what is about. Is it a series of individual stories? Is there an overarching message? What's it all about?
A lot of the songs I've written before for my first two albums are very much storytelling, and I guess all songs really are storytelling. Certainly
Sure.
from for me they are. With this particular album, Freedom, I wanted to the whole approach to it was to be simpler and quite a lot of fun. And it's got a bit of a bluesy, a bit of a country feel to it,
Yeah.
which is something of a departure from my first two albums.
Hmm.
Um, so the name Freedom, every song on the album is a different about a different type of freedom. So you've got all sorts of different topics. I do get quite into I have quite a social conscience, you could say.
Of
So
course.
um, so my songs are not sort of love songs. It's probably because of my great age. I've sort of gone beyond.
That's okay. There's enough
I,
love songs in this world
I have
anyway.
I have got a lot of love songs on my various albums.
Sure.
But each of these songs is about a different type of freedom. So you've got the title track, which is Freedom, which probably isn't the most typical song on the album, but that was inspired by all the trouble that was kicking off in Afghanistan 2 years ago, and so Afghanistan, Iran more
Yeah.
recently, and the invasion in Ukraine. So and it's a song about really just freedom is for many of us, gratefully, thankfully, something that we take for granted. But for so
Right.
many people in the world, it isn't, and it's something they can only remember or imagine. So that's what that song is about. It might sound quite a dark sort of topic, but it's a very upbeat song, actually. So quite often
Sure.
I'll write songs where the lyrics might be, for some people, quite challenging. I mean, not sinister or anything, but I hope that they're always manageable for everybody. But the music might contrast very much with the tone of the lyrics, or the content of the lyrics, shall we
Sure.
say. So there's songs just quite simply about being carefree. There's freedom, which I've mentioned. Both of my parents died in 2020, so
Oh,
they
I'm
were a
sorry to
great
hear that.
age. They were well into their 90s, so
Yeah.
it was fine. And one of the songs, "Can You Hear Me," is actually a song to my mother, really. And so, if you want that, that's kind of a love song in a way. It's a
Sure.
very simple sort of ballad, and a lot of people have really taken to that because they find it quite a clever song. I don't know why they really find it so clever.
That's okay.
I mean, it's a very, very simple song. It did. I mean, having said that, it took me quite a long time to. I knew I wanted to write a song that was sort of dedicated to my mother, and so initially I called it the Mum Song, and I couldn't. It took me a long time from having the idea to actually be able to write it, because I didn't want it to be too schmaltzy or anything.
Right, right.
So I had to strike the right tone, really, which, you know, and eventually I got there. So yeah, but anyway, there's a whole range of songs covering lots of different topics. So yeah.
Nice. Well, like I said, I've really enjoyed it, but I want to know, like, I know that you operate as a solo artist based on the name, but do you have anyone else, you know, in the studio on the instrumental portions, on
Yeah.
the production? Like, how does it work?
Yeah. So basically, Freedom is my third album.
Right.
We may get to my backstory at some stage, because it's a little bit unusual.
I want to
Because
hear all about it. Don't let me stop you. There's no rules
okay.
here.
I came to music, to singing, quite well, relatively late in life.
Sure.
I was 50 before I summoned up the courage to do anything about singing in public.
Yeah.
And at that stage, it was cover songs, and I formed a little band, and we did a few gigs and things. And then I got diagnosed with which in the States you'd probably call chronic fatigue syndrome.
Yeah.
ME and its CFS is slightly different, but it's sort of, you know, it's a coverall term, I guess. So everything, you know, my work, performing, which I'd taken so long to actually find the courage and the confidence to do, had to stop. However, over the course of a couple of years, this is back in 2011 when I got my diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
But over the course of a year or two, I found that I was journaling, I was starting to write poetry, and found that I was writing song lyrics. I've never played an instrument, still never have played an instrument.
Okay.
I've never had any sort of formal music training. So also little tunes would come into my head, which I call musical doodles. So I would just hum those into a phone or something.
Sure.
And basically those were the seeds, really. And eventually, you know, they started forming into proper songs. And I did some online courses, and I'd always worked, even when I started, to sing in public, I used a singing teacher and so on. So I did some one-to-one tuition as well as online stuff, to sort of learn about constructing songs and how it should be done. You don't have to follow the theory and stuff like that, but I did initially because it was a good starting point.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and then that sort of all evolved into my first album, which came out in 2016, which was called This Girl, This Woman. So for that, I used quite a well-known, certainly in the UK, jazz pianist and composer called Jeanette Mason. So with the first album, my health still wasn't great, and also I was very relatively inexperienced. So she did all the arrangements and organized all the musicians and the production and everything. And so that was very cool. We had a big launch that was supported by Arts Council England, which is quite a big deal over here, which is an organization that supports the arts. And then I started working on my second album. So by that time, having worked with 2 or 3 different vocal coaches, singing teachers, I discovered a young woman called Georgia Train, because I'd attended a songwriter convention in London, and I heard her talking, and I just really liked her take on things, which was about sort of dispelling this myth of having to aim for perfection and things like that. Although she was quite a young woman, she had quite a good track record, and she'd written hit songs for the Kaiser Chiefs, and she supported Burt Bacharach. So look her up. She's a pretty remarkable person. And then in the spring of 2017 or something like that, I started working with her, and she lived in Brighton at the time. so as a vocal coach, but also as a mentor. And basically, she's been my mainstay ever since. So she and her right-hand man, Chris Stagg, co-produced my second album, The Window to My Soul, and I've also worked with them on Freedom. So Chris is the engineer and does all the mixing. And for both of those albums were mastered at Abbey Road Studios in London, which is very cool.
Yeah, extremely cool.
Growing up as a Beatles fan, to actually get to go to Abbey Road to have your own music mastered was a bit surreal, really. But anyway, so that's sort of my team. So Georgia's my mentor still. She's my vocal coach. Chris is my, he's the engineer and also as a musician in his own right. But I have got a new project coming up, actually, which I know we're not sort of talking about particularly today, but
no, let's talk about it.
And there's somebody else who's coming, who's involved in that. So I'm going to the new project is basically going to be a collection of 12 songs, that 4 from each of my 3 albums. But an acoustic album. So the arrangements are done by another guy called Chris, who's Chris Finn, who's even younger than the other 2, really. And he's just done some extraordinary arrangements of songs that obviously I'm very familiar with, but they're acoustic. So he's also he plays the instrumentation. He plays the instruments as well as having done the arrangements. So either piano and or guitar, but he just has this extraordinary sort of talent I didn't believe acoustic instrumentation could sound quite as amazing. So I've got quite a lot of work to do now to on my voice and the interpretation of the songs, because I'm revisiting songs that I've been used to singing in a very particular way and with lots of instrumentation and so on. And it's making me use my voice in a very different way as well, because some of them he's given a real kind of musical theatre feel to, which is just really, when I first heard them and started singing, I found myself using my voice in some very weird ways. So it's kind of exciting, really, because the sound of them is going to be very, very different, and the sound of me will be very different from the original versions. And I'll be recording those in well, given that I've sort of had back-to-back colds throughout the last 2 months.
Yeah, maybe wait a minute.
Wait a minute. Yeah, exactly. So I'll probably record those in March, I think. The arrangements are ready. So
I mean, yeah, what better way to kick off the year than with more music?
So and I don't know if that's going to be an album. I haven't quite landed whether it's going to be just one big album or whether we release a song a month or something like. I haven't decided that yet, but that doesn't matter. I'll work that out.
That's okay. Well, hey, I really appreciate you taking the time to actually explain. That's so much more than I usually get, and it's it's always better when it's a great story. So thank you for that. I do have obviously some more questions about this record though. So one thing that I pulled from it, and one thing that I probably enjoyed the most, was that it does infuse so many different styles and genres into it. It's not just one thing. There's really just so much happening. So I want to hear from you, like, what label do you put on this? What's sort of like the elevator pitch for how you describe it?
It's a really good question, actually, because it's, there was definitely a blues influence with this.
Definitely, but there's so much more than that too.
There is. And I wanted, so I suppose what I was aiming for was sort of bluesy with a bit of country thrown in. So there's a couple of Rock On Ruby and Things I Forgot to Remember, which were very definitely, no, that's what it's called.
Oh, yeah.
It's track number 10. So they had very definite, I definitely set my cap at wanting them to have a country influence.
Sure.
So, there's a bit of everything. As I mentioned earlier, Freedom, which is, well, it's it's not deliberately the title track, it's just that's what it's called. Doesn't really fit into either of those. It's a bit more bit more funky, I guess, really. So yeah, it's a bit more bluesy and so on. It's an upbeat album. It's quite they're quite simple songs, really. So a lot of them are just 12-bar blues.
Sure.
Whereas some songs on my first two albums are quite complicated musically. So I wanted this to be about freedom. You know, I guess with my sort of background, I wanted there's a personal element to it, which is, you know, finding some freedom of expression, of coming out of, you know, quite a lot of years of really quite poor health into a better place, and then all the different freedoms that we experience, you know, either personally or, you know, throughout the world, really globally.
Of course.
So you know, even the color of the album, of the vinyl, because I also went with vinyl this time,
Nice.
whereas the first two albums were CDs. But the color of the album is a very bright blue, and there's a bit of that color in the artwork on the Spotify and stuff. And that is a color that is very often, what do I want to say, linked to or connected to freedom. You know, so all the different sort of elements were about freedom and making things fun and easier and less complicated. I guess that I have a tendency to overthink things and sometimes make things a little too complicated for, you know, and I've probably done that quite a lot with my music in the past, and I wanted this to be quite different, really, and the feel of the songs to be quite different. So there's quite a lot of fun going on, and quite a lot of upbeat stuff on the song. But there's some lovely stuff as well, like Drifting and Can You Hear Me, which was the song for my mum that I mentioned earlier. You know, creative freedom. So Get in the Ring is about finding your creative freedom after, you know, as many of us will be able to relate to, after sort of wondering, you know, when's it all going to come back? Why so stuck? Yeah, and we did film 3 music videos for 3 of the songs. So Get in the Ring was quite a fun video for that, and Things I Forgot to Remember, and then Drifting as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, obviously it sounds like there's so much in the works right now, but do you have any plans to play these songs in a live setting, maybe sometime this year?
Well, I was going to, for the first 2 albums, I had quite big launches. But I wanted to have a launch for Freedom back in, I think, well, it was October when the album came out. But my health wasn't great. I'd had COVID a while back and a few knock-on effects and that and so on. So I ditched that. I definitely want to perform the songs on Freedom. But because I've got this new project coming up, I think the likelihood is that I'll wait until I've recorded that and then probably set up some dates in the spring and summer, to, you know, which will give me the opportunity to perform songs, the acoustic versions, but of course, because it's a collection of songs from all 3 albums, then I get, you know, I've got quite a lot of material ready.
Well, no, that kind of brings my next question, is like, if you had to pick a handful of songs from this record to play live, which ones do you think are going to trend?
Oh, from Freedom.
Yeah.
From Freedom. Ooh, that's a big one. So let me have a look at my list here.
Take your time.
Well, I you know, I'm a sucker for a ballad and a torch song. So, you know, I did do a small gig actually, so I'm slightly forgetting the fact that I did a little acoustic kind of pop-up back in October. So we did Get in the Ring, we did Rock on Ruby, Things I Forgot to Remember, because they're all good fun songs, Drifting and Can You Hear Me, because they're nice and sort of simple and get the audience's attention, I think, really. But, you know, I think most of them on Freedom are, doable in a live context. I think,
Right.
yeah, I think they lend themselves to live performance. And I have to say, when I was writing them, I was very much writing them with performing in mind.
Sure.
So hopefully, you know, I will be able to do more of that in 2023. Definitely.
I think time will tell, but I have
Yeah.
no doubts in my mind you're going to make it work. You seem like a very dedicated individual, so I think you'll make it
Yeah.
happen. Um, well, I've got a couple more questions for you, and this next one you've sort of touched on similar topics, but obviously we're right at the top of the year. It's right at the end of the first week of the new year, and so I'd love to know, what are like some lofty goals that you'd hopefully like to hit by year's end, even though it
Um,
sounds like there's so much in the works already.
yeah, well, I did an interview for a, an arts and culture organization for the county that I live in, back
Sure.
home in the UK. And so that made me sort of think about things like that. And yeah, I probably have touched on it really. So the thing that I'm very, you know, I'm enjoying doing some promo for freedom, and doing, you know, talking to people like
Yeah.
yourself on, and just sort of spreading the word. I do see it as a marathon, not a sprint. So I have to sort of hold back
Oh
sometimes.
yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. You know, you let that bird go free. You know, when you released freedom, and you know, now it's there, so you can
Right.
take you about sort of promoting it and so on. But obviously, what I've tended to do, or what has tended to happen, rather than it being a grand plan, really, because I didn't bring out my first album till 2016, and then
Right.
the second followed 3 years later, and then Freedom was 3 years after
Yeah.
that. It seems to have been a cycle, a 3-yearly cycle, where I've written new material, and then it's turned into an album. So with this new project that I'm going to record in March, hopefully, now, it was going to be February, but I think I'll probably have to delay it.
Sure.
That's coming very quickly off the
Yeah.
back of having brought out Freedom. And although it's songs that, you know, I don't have to write from scratch,
Sure.
and the arrangements are ready, everything's ready for me to record. Still, it's about developing, really, as an artist, I guess, really, and evolving. And it's these songs I'm going to be singing in a very, very different way, very different arrangements and levels of instrumentation, or very little instrumentation, actually.
Right.
So it is going to be much
Sure.
about how I choose to sing them. So that's a completely new direction. So although they're old songs, or relatively, they're only a few years old, but the songs I've already written and recorded and performed, they, you know, I'm thinking and working out how to actually record them and perform them in a very different way. So that's taking me in a completely different direction,
Of course.
in my own evolution, my musical development. So that's really exciting. That's very much my focus for the next sort of few months. And then, you know, along, you know, whilst that is happening and I'm working on those, I want to sort of I'd like to line up some events where I can perform them.
Right.
And I don't know, you know, when that would be, whether I'll try and do them at arts festivals or private gigs. I'm sort of, there's a lot of ideas swimming around in my head, really, as to the best way to perform those. And because they are acoustic, and, you know, in theory, I should therefore be able to rely upon one terribly talented musician to accompany me.
Sure.
But the nature of those songs is also because some of them are a bit musical theatre.
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking about what sort of exciting settings could I perform them in, actually, rather, you know, than the sort of standard, you know, whether it's in a pub or a bar or a theatre or whatever.
Right.
So that that releases quite a lot of exciting thought, a lot of exciting opportunities, I guess, really, and ideas. So that's sort of my main focus, really. And
Nice.
I think if you know, if I can be really pleased with how that recording goes, get some good promotion under my belt for Freedom, and then get some gigs lined up for the spring and summer and the autumn. I think that will be pretty good, actually.
Well, sounds like
I'll be
there's
doing I'll be doing
so much to
I'll
do. You're
be
going to
doing
be busy,
well,
that's for a fact.
I'll be doing well if I achieve those things. Yeah.
Absolutely. Jude, my last question for you here is basically for the person that is going to discover you from this, what is an opening message you'd like to say to them before they listen to your music for the first time?
Oh, that is a very difficult one. Any supplementary questions to help me with that?
Now, there's
Um,
no wrong answers here.
no. Well, again, the arts and culture thing that who interviewed me, I got asked a similar sort of thing, which is, what have you learned really?
Sure.
Is there a lesson that you've learned? And was it Barack Obama or somebody who said, yes, you can? I don't know. It was
Something like,
somebody like that, wasn't it? I think
yes, we can, maybe, probably.
something like that.
Yeah,
And so I think, look, I didn't come to singing. I grew up knowing that I could hold a tune, but I wasn't from a musical family, so I didn't get any encouragement. I was a kid singing to pop songs, but I harbored this very deep-seated passion and belief, but I didn't have a public-facing belief. I
sure.
didn't have confidence because I hadn't been given confidence. I didn't sing in choirs or do drama or anything like that. I was quite a sporty family. So it was completely in my imagination, So if I sung when I was singing on my own in my bedroom as a kid or a teenager, it was a fantasy world, really.
Right.
So then it started to become a bit a reality, but not until I was 50. And then I got ill, so it all sort of had to stop. So it was like,
Right.
after taking so long to sort of get out there and share your voice and share what you can do, it all kind of went pear-shaped, really, for want of a better
Sure.
term, and which is really hard. But then, completely unexpectedly, the writing started happening. And then, 5 years after I'd been diagnosed with this illness that had stopped me from performing, I'm recording an album with really top-notch musicians in
Sure.
a couple of the best recording studios in London. And actually, one of the things that I said to somebody recently was, which is probably still something that I'm slightly gobsmacked about, and I think there is a message in it to do with yes, you can. I was staring through the glass with these musicians who play for a lot of very, very well-known bands, and my music, the sheet music to some of my songs, were sitting on their music stands, and it made me feel, when I sat there in
Yeah.
whenever 2015 or something, it just made me feel so emotional, and I still am slightly blown away by that, because I could never have imagined that I would be bringing out my own music that I had somehow written, although I don't write music,
Here
I
you
don't,
are.
but I create it,
Sure.
and with a bit of help from the right people, I then
Course.
turn, and then having two of my albums mastered at Abbey Road Studios,
Yeah.
I just sort of think, really?
Wow.
Still have to pinch myself to when I think that's happened, actually. So
It's amazing.
people who may be watching this, and if it inspires anybody, whether it's just because they haven't felt that they were able to do something like this,
Sure.
whether whether just because they don't think they have the ability or for health reasons or whatever. Where there's a will, there generally is a way. So, you know, go for it and give it a go.
It's a great answer. Jude, I seriously,
Way through
no,
that,
it's
but
fine. It's fine.
yeah,
Sincerely, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. I'm so happy that we could end up making this work. And
me too. And thank you so much.
you're so welcome. Please let me plug your music for you one more time here.
Yeah.
If you guys didn't catch it the first time around, the record is called Freedom. We will have links in our articles so that you can listen and share and follow along. And obviously, there's so much more on the way, and I'm excited for it. So, say stay tuned for the rest of the year. And
Thank you so
yeah,
much. Thank
thank
you.
you. Have an
And
amazing rest of your time in Spain, and I
thank,
hope to speak soon.
okay, thanks a lot,
Awesome.
Austin. Bye.
Take
Take
care.
care.
Bye bye.
Bye.